Can you beat Persona 3 Reload using only Pixie? An age-old question, and my answer is, damned if I know. I've never played Persona 3, so I'm going into this completely blind. I have no idea what I'm getting myself into. I may be the one in need of an invoker after this. The rules are as follows. The protagonist can only use Pixie unless the game forces me to use another persona. Everyone else can use theirs as well, but for me, Pixie will be the only persona equipped. I will be playing this on Merciless. As Pixie is the greatest persona in the series, it is only right that we take down this game on its hardest difficulty. As I begin my journey with a leisurely walk through the streets, a girl points a gun at her head. Well, this has taken a dark turn already. As I make my way through whatever the hell this place is, I can't help but notice all the blood splattered all over the ground. Something is indeed not right. Yes, my character is late. That is the problem here, not the fucking blood. I then notice some suspicious looking coffins. My investigational insights are indeed a sight to behold. There is indeed something wrong. Fear not, everyone. I am on the case, yet again. But first, I make it to my new base of operations. Now the games shall truly begin. When I make my way inside, I see a boy in a prison outfit. Now that is peculiar. Usually, it's me the one who is dressed like an inmate. Apparently, I must sign a contract. That means I am fully responsible for my actions. That's a pretty steep condition. How am I supposed to blame other people for my problems with a contract like that? Now I need a name. A man recently said I sound like Daffy Duck. Such an emotional sucker punch hurt me greatly. It was very despicable. Practically cried myself to sleep for a week. My character will now be named Daffy. I am then confronted by the girl who was playing Russian roulette earlier. Shit, she has a gun. And I don't have Pixie yet. It's rabbit season, not duck season. Luckily, I am saved by this red-headed beauty who also has a gun. Seems to me I am the odd one out. Next thing I know, I'm being brought to my room and sent in there like a toddler. The next morning, my new friend offers to take me to school. So we take the train there, and she fucks off and leaves me there on my own. I decide to take a detour to the Jacks. I once again show my amazing eavesdropping skills that I have developed throughout my time playing this series. I hear these two dorks talking about samurais. Now they are my kind of people. And then her. I know her. She was in Persona 4. So that place we went to for no reason whatsoever was fan service. Every day is a school day. After I completed my exploration, I made my way into the faculty office, where I met my new teacher, who proceeds to remind me about my dead parents. After class, she can kick me in the nuts for good measure.
If a job's worth doing, it's worth doing well.
I definitely heard that one before. Next thing you know, I'm being quizzed about Yukari's love life, as if I'm going to tell this random bozo the gossip. At least buy me dinner first. When school was finished, I meet Junpei. Now he looks like a bro. Is he my bro? Yukari makes it sound like I got some action. That will definitely help my rep at school. I definitely need that. I meet a guy who has to text all his new friends he made today, because apparently they're nowhere to be found. Hopefully halfway through the game, when I get back to him, he'll tell me about the girlfriend that he made while he was on holidays, that lives in another town. Now that eventful day was done and dusted, I make my way home, where I am greeted by the redhead. She must be here to flirt with me. No, she's here to send me to bed like a little toddler. Again, seriously, what's with all these chicks in this game sending me to bed? These two must have been the ones to raise Morgana to be like this. They're his mothers. I pay attention in class for the first time in my life, and I'm able to answer a question without Google telling me for the first time in my life, which raises my charm and not my intelligence, because that makes sense. But hell, I'll take it. The first time I've ever been a good student in my life. I meet some chairman who also sends me to bed and makes a magnificent joke as well.
As they say, the early bird catches the bookworm. Get it? Bookworm? Because you're students?
The quality this channel strives for. Finally, I learn why I'm being sent to bed. I'm being spied on. How outrageous. What if I was doing some extracurricular activities? Would they just watch me bash one out? As they continue to spy on me, I make my way into the velvet room. It seems to be an elevator. That big nose is a sight for sore eyes, as he cryptically chats shit like he always does. I once again get sent to my room. Fortunately, karma is a bitch, and they are now being attacked by a shadow. Hate that, lads. Wait a second. I'm here, and I have no persona. I'm practically defenseless. Somebody come and save me. Not her. She seems about as useful as me at the moment. I make my way downstairs to escape, but it's at the door. Clearly, there is only one option here. I can take it, but the game wouldn't let me. So I fled to the rooftop, where a shadow is waiting for us. Good thing I have Yukari here, ready to fight. And she's got stage fright. Wonderful. Guess it's up to me. I awaken a persona. Ignore the creepy face. That's just my orgasm face. The persona lasts for all of 5 seconds before it dies and becomes a new persona. Wasn't expecting that, not going to lie. But now it's time to fight. Fortunately, the game isn't making me use this new persona. So I melee attack to get away without using Orpheus, because Orpheus is a scrub. This section was clearly made for you to use him. I got very lucky, and I mean very lucky. I managed to dodge quite a number of hits, and even then, I was brought down to 1 health point left. At this stage, I knew I had 2 options. I could use Orpheus and guarantee my victory, or I could use melee and hope he misses. I decided to risk it all, and fortune favours the brave. Absolutely exhausted from my poxy victory, I collapsed. Igor decides to pay me another visit, chats about how interesting Orpheus is, and I wake up in the hospital where Yukari decides to share her life story. Despite the fact I was straight out of a coma, I can just walk out. This doctor should have his license revoked. Basically just said, yeah, you'll be grand. The next day, Yukari begs me to walk home with her. At first, I thought this was a love confession, but in reality, she didn't trust me to get home on my own. She even walks me to my room and then tells me to meet her on the 4th floor. Then real life disaster struck. I made a massive error in judgment. The recording software I used froze. I thought I had it saved. I was almost certain of it, but it's gone. So to sum it up quickly, it wasn't a love confession. Junpei joins the dorm. The others beg me to join their little group because I'm amazing. The school turns into the Shadow Nest, and we're going to climb up this thing similar to how we did in Persona 4 Golden. And now I'm here. Since I'm in Tartarus, I now have to go through the tutorials once again, where the game tells me stuff I already know. Yukari finally learned how to use that gun. I haven't had to use a persona yet. This was good. In my experience, fellas, Pixie is usually the first alternative persona you get in these games. If the tutorial was to switch to her, that would mean I would be using Pixie for the entire game. Of course, Atlas would decide to ruin a good thing. Now, I could only hope that Atlas would not make me use her. Fat chance of that. Since these things are weak to ice, I can only assume that this persona is always the one you'll get and have to use. After my lucky escape earlier, I have been forced to use another persona. Now that is annoying and complete bullshit. Just let me use the only one I want. Is that so hard? Now that the game was done fucking me, they decided to ruin my day even further by bringing me to a teleporter and having me go back to the entrance because everyone is tired. Today was a disaster. Not only did I get the wrong persona, I had to use it. And I didn't even get Pixie afterwards. How am I supposed to save the world without her? We're like the dynamic duo. You can't have me without her. I meet another man asking me about Yukari, but apparently he doesn't care. I almost fall asleep in class. I see women fawn over Sanada, who doesn't even care about them enough to even pretend to know their names. And yet they're still chasing him, while me and poor Junpei are crying into our cereal. Sanada introduces me to a police officer. That's not good. I don't do well with the force. They usually put me in the slammer, halting my good work. This one seems alright, but I'm not letting my guard down. These men have a history of fucking me over. Like when Dojima betrayed me and put me in the slammer. Junpei moans about our budget and then fucks off. Since I didn't have Pixie yet, I decided that was my first priority. So I went home, now that I could freely roam Tartarus. I figured it was no time like the present. It didn't take long for me to get her. First battle, and I had already gotten my girl. This card on the right is supposed to be super important, but the card on the left is definitely the most important card in the entirety of this game. So welcome home, Pixie. You have been missed. I quickly equipped Pixie and had a look at her stats. They're not as good as my other two Pixies yet. Give me time. Her moveset also leaves a lot to be desired, so the others will have to carry me for a bit. This doesn't last long, however, as I am able to level up Pixie to get Zeo, as well as obtain single shot, which confirms that I will be able to make Pixie have better moves. Fantastic news! Since Pixie is combat ready, I carry on to the second floor, where I run into the first mini-boss of the game. I recognize those birds in Persona 4, if my memory serves me correctly, which it usually does. They are quite weak to electricity. Should be an easy boss fight. Well, that's not certainly how that was supposed to go, and just when I thought things couldn't get any worse. But Junpei was the hero. He had a spell they were weak to. We had some hope. How? Clearly, they got lucky the first time. I will annihilate them this time. First, I guarded to protect myself and to make sure they wouldn't get a second hit. Anything that can go wrong does go wrong. Realizing that I stood no chance, I decided to go out swinging and kept attacking until I too eventually died. I needed to get better, but for now it was time to run away with my tail between my legs. I meet the guy who asks about girls he doesn't care about and proceeds to mention the girl he doesn't care about again. But perhaps more importantly, I made my way to the arcade. The arcade is actually very important because in it I can play games that increase my persona's stats. Like tonight, for instance, it was going to increase my magic. It seems to be a set amount of 3, but this will help me make Pixie more powerful. I make a move on a girl and get rejected. Art imitating real life. I then proceed back into Tartarus for round 3. I immediately guard, just to make sure they don't get a second hit, and then focus on keeping Junpei alive. I get a lucky miss, and I use Junpei to knock them both down and get in an all-out attack. As a bonus, one of the birds stays down. Feeling daring, I use Pixie to hit one of them with the confusion. With one of them down, I'm able to do an all-out attack after knocking only one down. Of course, he eventually gets back up and hits Junpei, freezing him in the process. Wouldn't want it to be easy, would we? This does stall me, but once he's free, I'm able to defeat the first bird with an all-out attack and then fire from Junpei. I learn a new technique called shift, which is basically just baton passing. Let's call it what it is. At this point, things were getting a bit easier. I was making my way through the floors without any major issues. Any skill cards I saw, I would immediately pick them as they might come in handy. I still have no idea what this move does, but I might need it one day. I get an Arcana burst, which gives me the handy skill of Buffu, so I immediately give it to Pixie, as it is an element no one on my team has, and my choice pays off immediately. First fight after I give Pixie the move, they're weak to ice attacks. These are also one of the more recurring enemies too, so this just wasn't a one and done. The only thing was, I was beginning to use a lot of SP, but I'm okay with that, because at least I wasn't being carried. I obtained Garu, which I wasn't really interested in, but then I obtained Garula, which I was obviously very interested in, and gave it to Pixie straight away. This move was a massive upgrade to anything I had in my arsenal, so it was too good to pass up. I do realize she now has 3 elements, but that just means she has more options. Think of her like the Avatar. For now, with the way my SP was dropping anyway, I wouldn't be able to use it much. I even got Augie, but I chose not to use that one. I encountered the next boss, but with my SP so low, I decide to dip and come back another day. And by other day, I mean the next day, because I go back straight away. I tried Bufu, which didn't do much, but Yukari used wind, and it knocked him down, and the hands are weak to fire, so we were always going to get an all-out attack. My wind attack also done a lot of damage on its own, not to mention he missed as well. With their pacifist approach and the damage of my own persona carrying the team, it was a straightforward victory. I ran into a golden hand, and you can tell this is the first one you encounter in the game because he's not dodging nearly every attack and then running away immediately. Yukari is killed by a beetle, but I avenge her, and as you can see, I have begun to almost single-handedly carry my team with Pixie. You'll love to see it. Not wanting to stop here, I use an item to restore my SP. I'll probably end up regretting using that later, cause I'll probably need it at a more important stage. But oh well. But this item allows me to make it to the next boss and take him on, who is weak to electricity. I had to be careful with Junpei, as he's weak to wind, and I didn't want him getting too many second attacks. So I put Junpei on guard duty while I attacked with Pixie. While there was no complications with the plan, I did have fuck all SP after it again. Junpei then recommended that we switch leaders, as if I haven't carried him through this entire thing since the first mini-boss. If he was half as good as he thinks, we wouldn't have to leave every time I'm out of stamina. Mitsuru wanted to have a talk, one-on-one, so my expectations were pretty high, and then immediately let down when she asked me to be one of the school lickarses. Nevertheless, I agree, because I like the idea of pretending to be a good student. I then decide to become an honest man and work for a living, looking as enthusiastic as I possibly could. After my little part-time gig, I decided to go back into Tartarus, where I was beginning to worry about my character's back. Carrying the entire team like this is not good for posture. Once I finally make it to the 22nd floor, I realized that it was locked, so I couldn't go up. The memento special. My work was done. Time to bounce. I should have actually stayed and got some more XP, but sure, what can you do? I am awoken by Jail Boy here. Is this my character in his younger form? Have I cracked the case? Who warns me of a boss fight about to come? Well shit, usually you'd get to pick when you fight the boss, but it appears in this case, I quite literally have only one shot at this. I decided to grind to make sure I was at a high enough level. When the time came to fight this thing, I was ready. Mitsuru rides a bike all the way here, just to tell us she'll stand outside and guard the perimeter. Lucky her, we have to go onto these dangerous train tracks while she stays in relative safety. My stats were pretty good though. Pixie was already the strongest persona in my crew. Admittedly, her endurance isn't ideal, but why would I need endurance if I can whack them hard enough? We make our way to the train, where we decide to go inside. Good thinking. If this thing starts moving, we want to be inside it, rather than outside. Junpei might get to take a peek as well, which is a plus for Junpei. We get locked inside, the thing starts moving, we run into a shadow who flees at my raw power. A wise choice. You don't fuck with me. Junpei proceeds to do just that as he chases after it, and we're ambushed by more shadows. It was weak to electricity, so it was an easy fight, but my troubles weren't done yet. More shadows appeared, but like before, 2 of them were weak to electricity, and I just assumed the other was weak to wind, and it worked brilliantly.
Junpei was acting kind of strange, wasn't he? Why'd he snap and get so upset?
Because he's sick of being outshone by me, so he decided he was going to outshine me by having me save his fucking ass again. I proceeded to save Junpei, and because the shadows were all weak to each of our elements, we all got a moment to shine. Good for Junpei. He can stop being depressed now. I make my way to the end of the train and finally encounter the boss. I tried to start strong and go with electricity, but it didn't do much. She responded with an ice attack, and by fuck did she do some damage. I realized I was in trouble here. I had no choice but to guard. Not to mention, she also decided to speed up the train. At this point, I felt as though I had to get more involved. She summoned some allies, and I thought they were weak to electricity, so I figured that would be a good way for me to get involved. I could get rid of them and then get a 1 more and guard. I was wrong and paid for it dearly. But you live and learn, and I managed to pull off my plan the next turn. This would allow Junpei to focus on her, and she wouldn't get a second attack. I got bamboozled again, and once again, I paid for it. I was getting lucky. She never got the notion to attack me while I was down, because I would have been fucked. I once again switched elements, and yet again, this time it worked. She sped up the train again, and at this point I realised there was no time to be worrying about getting second hits. We had 3 minutes to knock her down from half her health. Pixie is the strongest hitting persona, so I immediately began using her strongest spell. Fortunately, she tried to confuse us all, but missed everyone, and I once again hit her with some serious damage. As she summoned more enemies, I began to blow them all away, going all out with Pixie in the hopes I would get through this before she used an ice attack. Junpei, not wanting to be outdone, hit a critical. She responded with another ice attack, and really could have ended me and be done with it. But I won't complain. But that mistake was her last, as I summoned Pixie, who had essentially carried me to victory. With one final attack, this boss had ridden its last train. Unfortunately, the train hadn't stopped. Everyone was beginning to panic. Once again, it was up to me to come up with a daring plan to save the day. An idea no one would ever think of. So I pulled the lever and stopped the train. My genius truly knows no bounds.